Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day as we continue to celebrate so many amazing people across the great state of Mississippi who are working in the trenches to try to work so hard to make this such a great place to live, work, and play. Listen, no big speeches to get today. We're going to jump right into the show. We have Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann for the entire show today. And I'm going to go ahead and bring him in, and we'll get this show rolling. But how you doing, Delbert?
We're doing great, Ricky. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've chatted. I've been watching the situation really closely. There's so much to talk about. But generally, before we get started, I like to remind people, and I think this would be a good time to do it, you've got such a critical role in the Senate. Explain to people what the lieutenant governor does.
Well, first of all, it's supposed to be a part-time job, and that's really a misnomer. So I work here 6 or 7 days a week. Second is our specific constitutional goal is to be elected statewide, and then we become the president of the Senate. Now, the president of the Senate basically is a referee for all the bills and everything that goes on. And the rules are adopted at the first day of the Senate that gives the president of the Senate, which is the lieutenant governor, his power. And under those rules, they have given me, and I'm honored to receive, a power to designate every committee chairman and every member of every committee. They've given me the power to review every single bill and send the bill to the committee that I think is appropriate. And I really take that to heart and work really hard with that. Going up to the session, I'll meet with all my senators. What are the bills? What's important to you? Here's what I think we ought to do, tax reform or whatever. And we meet with every one of the senators. I appoint every chairman. There are 41 chairmen. I meet with every chairman. What do you want to do this year? Then we draft legislation with I have a staff of 5 people here. We draft the legislation with our drafting attorneys. Then I referee the session downstairs. Next door here at the Senate. And as during that, it's very specific rules on who speaks. I can just designate who speaks or doesn't speak, that kind of thing. I rarely use that privilege. But that's it in a nutshell. We work year-round getting prepared for the session, working with senators, shepherding those bills through, making sure they get to the right committee, making sure they don't have something wrong with them, which is often, and just working with all the senators. And then actually every day I start at 10 o'clock as the president of the Senate, and I run the gavel for the entire time.
Well, listen, you and I over a course of a long number of years have gotten to know each other. And one of the things I've always said that I appreciate about you is, first of all, you're a smart guy, but you're a tax lawyer. And you're a very detail-oriented guy. So you are deeply engaged in all of these bills. And while we're not going to talk about the tax bill yet, having a lieutenant governor who is a tax lawyer in the midst of this incredibly dynamic, complicated situation is a real benefit to the state. And I bet you often find yourself drawing on that thinking, man, I'm so glad that I've got that in my background, because it really helps you be a better leader, doesn't it?
Well, I think it does, Ricky. Having drafted retirement plans, which I did, and represented taxpayers, which I did 35 years, I was honored by my fellow attorneys in Mississippi voted me to the best lawyers in America in tax and employee benefits for 16 years in a row. And that's the people you work with and against a lot of times. So I was very honored by that. And I think that history, like every other member of the Senate, I bring my history there. The farmers bring their history, the cattlemen bring their history, the insurance people bring theirs, and I bring a tax background. And you're right, I probably pay more attention to the numbers. I think I drive them all crazy.
It's a good thing. That's the way I see it. And as a voter, as someone who cares deeply about the state, it's great to know that we've got our leaders in the trenches really understanding the future implications. And as we'll get to when we get to the tax bill, building in some fail-safes. That's what you're hoping to do, so we don't make any big mistakes around that. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, I've written about it a lot recently, as it relates to coastal Mississippi, but it applies to a Mississippi frame. Let's take coastal Mississippi for just a second. Coastal Mississippi is at a point where, if you look back in our history, we've been challenged so many times with Katrina and the oil spill. And the way I would say it and the way I write about it is that these wars and battles have occurred And I think we've been resilient through that. It's been tough, but we have come back. And I don't know if you've seen this specific statistic, but it took us until 2022, 17 years, to get back to our pre-Katrina peak in jobs. Think about that for a minute. And we had to fight and claw every step of the way. I had this terrific conversation with John Hairston last year, and I'm actually writing about it now because it's such a powerful conversation. He said that through these war times, through these difficult battles that we had to go through, like Katrina and the oil spill, et cetera, we've had to be resilient and work together and fight to get through those moments. But we're in peacetime now. We don't have something like that focusing on us. And what are we going to do about it? So he thought about he mentioned our forefathers in creating Stennis, our forefathers in working so hard to expand Ingalls, and look what it became. And then you think about the gaming and all we went through to make gaming so successful in coastal Mississippi. His question is, during this peacetime, what is it we're going to do to raise the bar to that next thing? What's the next thing going to be? And one of the things I came out of this understanding is that for us to move forward, and this is not just a comment about coastal Mississippi, but it's also one about Mississippi, we have to be willing to dream bigger. And if you think about the conversations that are happening in the legislature now, whether it be tax reform or school choice or any number of other things that you're doing, none of it's easy. All of it's hard. But it's about making Mississippi more competitive. It's about dreaming bigger. It's about saying, okay, how are we going to transformatively create the scenario for Mississippi that enables us to be successful for many years to come? And so these are serious conversations that we're having, aren't they?
They are, and you're seeing that happen around the state. The things that will move us forward is first to have an educated workforce. Doesn't matter what we dream. If I can't have somebody punch the button or whatever they're doing, or weld or whatever, if I don't have anybody for that, we don't have anything. Second is we got to have energy in Mississippi. So that's been a big push for us here. Then we start looking at the types of industry we want to bring in, and Governor Reeves has been heavy into that. We've got the largest AI plant in the country being built up here in Madison County. You're seeing those things proliferate on the coast. You're seeing like Superior Optical. That's a guy from Colorado, a guy from Florida, who now making eyeglasses for the entire veterans right there in Ocean Springs. Have expanded twice.
Yes.
So, maybe an old line business, no pun intended, but now it's blossomed into a giant business. So I think you look at each one of these business corridors that we can take. It's real important we keep our banking. I've had that conversation with John Hairston. We need to keep our banking, that capital here to allow small businesses to grow to Superior or whatever. We need to keep that. The water is a tremendous asset to the coast. You see and I can't remember the name right now of the torpedo that they build down off of Gulfport. That's a fantastic thing. We're looking at repurposing part of Stennis to the Stennis of the future. They're not competitive necessarily in testing rockets and some of the others. We're meeting with them on expansion possibilities there. So we're also looking at the other parts, like we've never finished the LNG part over in Pascagoula. It just sits there empty right south of Chevron. So we'd like to have them start shipping to Europe, which is now the end thing because the Russians have cut the power line. So there is a lot of forethought going into this about where we need to be. And the two bases that start with that, or three really, are an educated workforce, energy, and capital. And so where we build a process where we can give capital and lower taxes so people can keep more money, that part's important. You see the test scores now, Ricky. Yeah. I mean, we used to be 50th. If they'd let Canada in, we'd have been 51st. But, we have come so far now. We're at 30th and 9th in our test scores. We're doing really, really good. We got a ways to go. But on the coast, you have all these A-rated schools, Ocean Spring, go to anywhere over there. You can get a really good education on the coast. That is a key thing that you're, maximizing your water potential is important to us as well. The capital from the bank is really important to us. All the banks that are down there, those are really important. and the fact that we have energy. When I meet with the energy source of Mississippi Power, they say they have excess energy today. I'm going to need that because we're building the place to train all of the Air Force's cybersecurity in Biloxi. And we put up $40 million like 3 years ago. It's finally being built now. All the cybersecurity will be trained for the Air Force, and we have room to train our own people. That will create a whole new industry on the coast where you've got the cybersecurity, as you know, you can sit in front of a computer anywhere. That cybersecurity force will be a moving factor for us. So all of those are happening. We're investing money in the coast. You know, I'm real partial to the coast. It's just
let's do this. Let's pick it. We're at the end of our time for this first segment. We'll come back on the other side and we'll pick it up from right there, because what you're saying about the coast applies to Madison and the Golden Triangle. If you think about the dreaming that's happening across the state, we're in the game in a big way. We'll come back with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We have Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann with us. We're going to get into some legislative issues here in just a second, but we're putting a kind of a bigger frame on the conversation today, because what's happening in the Mississippi legislature right now, and what Delbert just sort of focused on before we went to break, is that we have a lot of the components, but we're going to have to continue to work on building, improving our education, thinking about energy sector. Incidentally, you think about this corridor that exists that's bringing these data centers here. Boy, does power and energy play a big role in that, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And you remember how you even started the coast. Water was the key. People came by the water. The Mississippi River, all the settlements are on the Mississippi River. Well, the new river is energy. If you've got electricity, you've got places people are going to put their ports being their businesses. And I can't emphasize that enough to you. We're building at least 2 new ones here in Mississippi in the energy sector. And I'm constantly checking with the co-ops and with the others to make sure we have enough energy for the next world, which is all going to be on computer and I guess off a keyboard some kind of way.
But dreaming big. We have to dream big. We cannot, there's a lot of reasons why, and this has always been just the truth. You name me the region of Mississippi, and there's an element of this. You can take the whole state of Mississippi, and that is that there's always a bit of gravity toward protecting the status quo. And sometimes, in order to advance the ball, you have to lead, and you have to make tough decisions. You have to line people. So that's why oftentimes when you've got these tough bills, like, for example, tax reform, you're not going to get it done the first time. And you may not get it all done the first time, but it takes time. There's a lot of education, isn't there?
Yes, there is. And we clearly we have to look at our own balance sheet, our own income statement, like any business that I ever worked for. You have to look at that and see where you're going, what you project out in the future, and then you have to see what the appetite is for expenses, both capital expenses and keeping people's money. Capital expenses for us, of course, are roads and bridges. We're maintaining like 30,000 miles of them now, so that's where a lot of our CapEx goes. And then what's the revenue stream? How much are we doing well? Are our taxpayers continuing to earn more money? And all of those are happening in Mississippi right now. And then how we spend that money. You know, Ricky, and you would know this, we raised $7.6 million or $7.5 million in our taxes. We spend $31 billion. Now, $14 billion of that comes from the federal government. So I don't control my own revenue. In fact, I control about a third of it. You know, they control the rest of it. So my president is telling me that he's going to cut stuff. So I'm trying to prepare, knowing, thank goodness for him. But I'm trying to prepare us for, like, when he cuts up, what am I going to have to prop up down here or just do away with, for that matter? We've shrunk the size of government by over 2,000 employees since I started, and we're probably shrinking another 2,000 employees during the next 3 years. We're trying to consolidate our government. We'll have a big press to do that. But we have to be prepared for what President Trump has been very clear-eyed to me, anyway, saying what he's going to do. He's going to downsize the government. He's going to quit spending, and Mississippi gets 2/3 of its revenue from the federal government.
Yeah.
So we better be prepared for that, or just to say that's a great idea and it's not going to affect me. Well, it is.
So you're seeing with Trump a complete kind of reshuffling of the deck, particularly on the economic side. I mean, he's putting meaning in his policies around America First. This most recent column that I wrote, I believe inside all of this, especially as it relates to tariffs and the re-onshoring of jobs. And look, some of the jobs the factories that closed in America that went somewhere else, they won't come back as the same kind of factories because you've got a whole new evolution of high tech that's changing the nature of manufacturing as we know it. But within all of that, there is a tremendous opportunity for Mississippi. I mean, you have to think about that, and that's why these other elements, whether it's education or energy or the other elements that you mentioned, that's why it's so important. This is our moment.
The same page. So I realize that people are going, when we do this with China, they're going to have to come over here and build our stuff. So when they do that, where do you want to go? In Mississippi, we're exploding with new business and industry, and the way we attract them: low tax structure, great environment, educated workforce, energy, and water.
Yes,
that's why people are going to come here. And so we are laying the platform for President Trump to be very successful, bring our businesses, as he calls, back on shore, or at least make us competitive with these people, like in the timber industry. Canada's been subsidizing their timber forever. You could actually cut a 2x4 in Canada, have it milled, shipped to Brookhaven, Mississippi, and put it in a house cheaper than I could cut it in that county and deliver it there. That's how bad we are with tariffs. And I know this because we were part of the in the international court. We were part of the litigation against Canada. I started that like 6 or 8 years ago. So those subsidies, the government, the president is so right about that. We are on an unequal playing field. Not only that, but a number of other issues. That's going to force people to come back to Mississippi, and I want it where it's really nice to be here. We got low tax. We got great education. Great outdoors. You can go gamble or you can go fishing. You can go hunting or you can ride on the river. Whatever. You go out to the islands. You own the island. We own Cat Island now. You go out to Cat Island. We own it. Whatever you want to do, I got it all right here. And I got the energy and the education to stand it up. Now, that's really important. You're so right about your thoughts about building Mississippi for the future. That's how we do that. And I'm anticipating that we will have significant growth from here.
Yes, I think you're right about that. And one of the things I'm urging us in coastal Mississippi to do is think about that regional. How can we take advantage of the economic development organizations that currently exist that are working within each of the 3 coast counties, and then bring together some other type of alliance that gives us a chance to have sort of a regional conversation, a regional goal on the big stuff. And think about, we don't just have one port. We have more. We have the port in Pascagoula. We've got a smaller, different kind of arrangement over in Hancock County. But what we bring that could really be one of the best success stories on the entire Gulf of Mexico. We get our heads together around that. I think there's a real opportunity for us.
I realized this 2 years ago. We funded purchase of several hundred acres there, just on the west part of Gulfport for the mega site. Yeah. So we started that, or I started it. I was real interested in that 2 years ago, met with Jamie and others from the coast. They came up and said, we need some other sites. We don't have small sites. So we started buying that site and it's now doing its environmental work. We started buying that site in anticipation that someday, maybe next year, maybe the next year, that we'll have a mega site where we want to have one for the coast. That it's not on the water necessarily. Some don't want to be on the water. They want to be inside the railroad. So that site will be ready when we're ready, when we get that attraction.
I think
that all the rest of it.
That shows excellent vision, and I think the future will show that it's not one mega site. It may be multiple mega sites, and it enables us. Think about the connectivity. You keep mentioning it. But the port in the interstate system and where Mississippi's located, just in America, centrally located, access to deep water, the opportunity for us to draw the kind of businesses in that need that kind of access. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I hate to keep using what Joe Max Higgins and the Golden Triangle has accomplished, but Lord, I mean, there's a best practice right here in the state of Mississippi, and we need to listen to how they did it. And we need to do it, and we can do it as a region. I'm convinced of it. And I'll be writing more about it as we go forward. Let's shift gears. Before we get into specific issues of the legislative session, I was in preparing for the show today. I was thinking about redistricting and the fact that we've got this federal court-ordered process in place. People don't tend to think of this year as being an election year, but in some in some ways it actually is because of redistricting. And to what extent does that change some of the conversations and maybe the appetite for risk with at least some senators?
Without question, we'll have under our plan at least 10 senators and maybe 2 open seats. So we'll have 12 senators out of 52 will be up for election this year. And of course, they become very attuned to what their local population is. They represent their local population. None of them are on the coast. I was real specific about that. We don't have anybody from the coast being subject to this federal court order, which, by the way, is overstepping the federal bounds. We should never have been ordered to do this. They told me that I had created that without gerrymandering and whatever, all the stuff we did right. And now they're telling me, but I just want 2 more majority-minority districts. Not any real reason for it, other than I just want them to be that way. So first, I'm upset about that, but as you can tell. But skipping that part, yes, you're right. When I had to do the tax bill and these others, we have to, for example, it's 3 cents a gallon increase. Well, some senators say, well, I don't want to raise the gas tax. People back home don't want to do that. And that's true. I don't either. But to keep a road up, for you to go to work, we got to raise it.
Hey, Delbert, why don't we do this? We'll pick it up right there because this is really important because it speaks to when you're dreaming big and you've got risks to take. In an election year, particularly, you look at the percentage of changes that are happening in the Senate. That actually goes to whether bills are going to make it or not make it based on how people weigh the risk. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. We're visiting with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. When we went to break, though, we were talking about redistricting, federal court-ordered redistricting that is taking place. It hits the Senate hard, and there's no way around it. It creates an election year for some senators, which then makes them a lot less, or I should actually say it this way, a lot more sensitive to risks that they're willing to take, and it factors in to how big we can dream. To be quite honest, that's kind of the bottom line. But it is a significant impact, and I'll let you kind of continue that part of the conversation, Delbert.
Yeah, we passed the income tax yesterday by a vote of 32 votes. It took 31. It's a 60% measure. It took 31 to get there. I didn't have all Republicans. I had 4 or 5 Democrats that voted with us, or the bill would not have passed. So I just tell you to reinforce you that a lot of things become very short considerations, like when am I going to get reelected, as opposed to thinking long term. And that's a natural habitat. I don't really object to that, or you say, but it does make it more difficult to do something bigger or longer. And ours is about as big as it can get. We're maintaining our roads, which I know people hate to do that. We're cutting the grocery tax, which I really wanted to do. That's strong. We're cutting the income tax, but finally eliminating it. We start all the way to 3%, which put 2.99%, which puts us the 3rd lowest. And then we gradually eliminated it after that. And probably the biggest dollar number involved in this is the retirement system. It's $25 billion over budget. And like we used to say in Warren County, when you got a hole big deep and you still stop digging, stop digging. So we proposed a new plan that'll be good for new employees, and yet allows us to make sure that we put enough money in there to fund our retirees and our current employees. So we're just kind of stopping the system. Like you got it right now, everybody stays the same. And then we're putting a new plan for employees. We're doing away with the plan for the members of the legislature. That goes away. And we really bring everybody back to a new starting plan that is actuarially solid. The one we got is not. So you talk about big, you talk about taxes, grocery, highways, and saving the state's retirement plan, which is $25 billion short. That's pretty big. And if we get all of that done this year, it will be a great year for Mississippi. And
in the midst of it, we still have a conversation about school choice. And you think about this, and again, I think probably legislators, 51% of Mississippians live in rural areas, as we all know. A large majority of the people who are coming into the legislature to represent their areas are from rural areas, so they go to church with their school boards, they go to church with their superintendents of education. This is a tough transition anyway to move to school choice, but it's going to be even more sensitive in this day and time. You know, as every time Trump mentions dissolving the Department of Education, he almost always in the next sentence says we're going to school choice. You would think that would grease the skids a little bit, but that's a hard conversation to have in Mississippi, isn't it?
It is, and the reason that I favor it because I look at Mississippi as a whole.
Yes.
And I'm kid centric. I want my kids to be educated for the same reason we just discussed. But locally, my individual superintendent say, look, you know, I don't have room, but for one more guy in my class and one girl in my class, I don't want to accept them. You know, if I accept the wrong one, I might get sued. All kinds of different reasons for that. I don't think on the coast they're really that excited about having because you have great school systems. But in Pascagoula, if you want to come to school there from another district, they charge you $2,000. So this school choice is going on for a price, for some dollar number. In New Albany, Mississippi, it's $250 to go to the city school from the county school. So they're actually doing this out there based on what the Board of Education has determined what the value would be for them to come. So I think we'll get further along on that. This year, it was not well received here down, particularly in the Senate. DeSoto County's got good school systems. They can't hardly build enough school for their own kids, so they didn't want to get into this. And so change is difficult like that, but it becomes very provincial. It becomes very geographic sensitive. And while I have a state view, there are people that have a county view or a city school view, and they have different views about taking people in or not. Or capacity is a big thing, and I think that's right. They should never be forced to take somebody if you have to build a whole new building for them. But the other side of that, a district should never be able to hold a kid back. If they want to move, they should not be able to hold them back. The money and our money that we pay ought to move with them to somewhere. If their mom or dad can get them there, they ought to move there. And so we'll keep looking at that. It didn't go very far this year again, so we'll see what we can do. But again, I have a different view than the local view.
Well, I think the way you said that is right, and maybe that's the way I should talk about it. And that is, I get it completely. I get the statewide level. I see what other states are doing. I've watched what's happening in Florida, of course, Louisiana, Alabama, and Arkansas more recently. You're seeing them beginning to move. Now, the fact that we're waiting might actually play to our favor because we can watch their experience and use real data to help us make the point here locally. But you know what compels me is the fact that we have school choice now. We really do for families who can afford it. You know, you can.
That's right.
My kids went to Catholic school up in the Mississippi Delta. There's some choices. Parents can choose to homeschool and so on. You just want. My kids got a great education, and my grandkids are getting a great education too. You want every Mississippian to have that same opportunity, and so, I think everyone can agree to that. It's when you get into the nuts and bolts of it, that's when it gets super complicated, and each school district's going to have a slightly different take on it, just depending on what their pressures are, and then that then transfers over to senators and representatives who are coming to Jackson, and those that you would think would be a slam dunk. Yeah, school choice for sure. It ain't that easy, is it?
No, sir. You lose the people that supported the president like I did. You lose some of them because their public schools are really, really good, and their superintendent's saying, man, don't bring somebody in here where I got to deal with them. What if they're a problem child or whatever? So there's all kinds of excuses being made to that. But we really need to think about the child. We really need to come back and think, what's the best for the child that we've got here? If we've got a capacity for somebody taking a few more kids, like I say, Pascagoula's reached that decision. It just costs you money to go there. So if we can reach that decision by the local school boards where most everything needs to be done, that's attractive to me. The only thing the legislation should be is that you can't hold a kid back.
You know, we had a lot of debate last year and discussion for good reason because of hospitals' challenge, not just in rural areas, but really across the state. You would think that something like a work requirement on Medicaid would be something that would be a slam dunk, but it's not easy, is it?
I'm sure I tried that. I thought it made a lot of common sense to me. We were able to get it through the Senate side, but eventually it died on off for various and sundry reasons. Others on the House side wanted full expansion. Thank gosh we didn't do that, because who knows what we're going to get reimbursed for now. But I had ours paid for by a fee charged to these managed care companies. And I thought that would stand whatever changes came out of Washington, and I think it would have. And it would have affected about 70 or 100,000 people, working people. That, you know, if you're not working, you're covered anyway. But working people making up to $30,000 or so would be able to get them health insurance. But it just didn't. It didn't go on the House side, and so we're back here.
Well, you can listen, man. We could do a whole show on Doge and Elon Musk and what he's doing, but you can bet that his AI guys are deep into things like Medicaid, trying to understand to what extent are we paying Medicaid to able-bodied people. And so, you know, it may not be a decision we have to make in Mississippi. It may come down as, you know, United States, congressional legislation before this is over with.
Right.
There's certainly some indication that's the direction they want to go.
Yeah, and it would be difficult to get that passed, I think. But whatever they come up with is fine with us. I want to be prepared to pay for it if we have to pay additional funds. I do get that. But other than that, we got to keep our people healthy to work and take care of their families. And if they're not healthy, they're not working. So
yeah, I mean, there's definitely no doubt about that. One of the things that I like to think about, and we can come back and drill down on any of these issues you want to. We tend to talk about the big deals, the big issues, like tax reform. In the meantime, there's a lot of bills getting passed. I mean, I think about the wild turkey stamp bill, which is something the hunting community really wanted. It was by the skin of your chinny chin, but it made it through. And we got it.
I really had to work hard for that one.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the stewardship fund when I had to work for that one. You'd think everybody want that too. Regardless.
When we come back on the other side, I actually want to say that while there seems to always be polarizing issues, whether it be Democrats versus Republicans, there's a lot of good bills coming through both houses of the legislature that are bipartisan. And so, that's the good news. When we come back on this side, we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll see after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show. We're visiting with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann today. And I can say this about him. I know that he is one who definitely burns the midnight oil. I don't think I've ever met a harder working man. But then you look at your team, and they're also extremely hardworking, and they're really working hard. But look, before we get to that, I want to just ask you real quick. I noticed you drinking a can of what is that you're drinking?
Story behind. Well, first of all, it's great. Comes from the Coast Chandelier. This is called their Turbo Hydrating Water. And if you remember, this is why you love Mississippi. I fell out from dehydration up here in front of the Senate and everybody. And boy, they tested me out. I did great. But anyway, I was dehydrated. So I go home the next morning. I don't know these people from Adam. I really don't. I've written them a nice note and everything. I go home. By the back door of my house are 8 cases of turbo water. No note. No, this is from us. No, hope you get better. Just 8 cases. I love you, man, and this is my contribution. And first of all, it's great. I encourage everybody to do it. It hydrates you much quicker. But that's the kind of people we got in Mississippi. That's the kind of people we got on the coast.
Yeah.
To take the time to get that up here and drop it by the back door. They didn't ask for anything other than I hope you get well. And I've got it in the refrigerator here, and I've got all the people in the couch for drinking it. So it's really, really good and good for you.
Well, listen, I love that you shared that story. In fact, I was glad that it was only dehydration. It was a scary moment that you bounced right back from, and I'm thrilled that you're swinging still. Coming back to your leadership team, You're hardworking. They are burning the midnight oil. You got to be pleased with how they're working together.
Yeah, we have a very small staff, 5 or 6 of us up here, and each of them takes we have 40 committees. Most of them will take 6 or 8 committees, and they live with that chairman and what do he need and how does it draft it, and then they do the research, the background research for him, like, how many states do this, or how many states eliminated the income tax? Well, nobody has really. We're probably one of the first, or maybe Alaska, but everybody that tried it failed. So we're one of the first ones to do that. How did everybody else fail? What do we ought to do? How's the education better? How do we ought to support that? And we're doing things like tuition-free community college. You got a great community college down there on the Gulf Coast. Tuition-free community college. We have problems in attendance, even on the Gulf Coast. We're averaging in the state 24% absentee. That means 24% of my kids aren't getting educated, Ricky. So we've bulked up the truancy officers and moved everyone to the local schools to get our kids back. Or if they're not, ask Dad why they're not there, So there are a lot of smaller things, like you were saying earlier, that have very impactful things that we're doing here in the legislature. And those bills are passing through the normal process. And they'll make differences for people, things like that, getting our kids back in school. One of them is retired teachers. Now, our retired teachers couldn't come back because they lost their PERS. So we got to pay for the PERS for them to get them back in the classroom. We're 3,000 teachers short. So bringing retired teachers back is a really good thing. They have a lot of experience. People love them there and everything. So that's really important bill, I think, that's coming out of education. So there are a lot of things. One-stop bill Daniel Sparks is doing, where all of our workforce development will be one spot. You call only one person instead of going through 6 or 8 different organizations. And next year, I want to work really hard on reorganizing the state government. We don't need 211 agency boards and commissions. We have 17 of them have less than 10 people in them. So you talk about a fight, we'll have a really big fight next year about what the size of the government ought to be and how it ought to function. So, there's good things. Really, there's good things coming on.
Yeah, I love the fact that, we tend to not focus on the large number of bills that make it through both the House and the Senate that are bipartisan in nature, that are about tweaking bills or doing things that are going to be really important to our state. They don't fall on the same level as tax reform or school choice, but still are really important. And lots of bills like that pass. You mentioned Daniel Sparks. I actually had him on the list. Is he one of the redistricting folks?
He's not redistricted, but he has handled our PERS legislation for us. So he's been the spokesman on PERS.
Yeah, so I was thinking that some minor shifts happened on his district, but this might be old information.
No, it was not under the Senate plan. We didn't have to go that far. Yeah. Most of those involved the DeSoto County area and the Hattiesburg area.
Yeah, I got you. Is Neil Whaley one of them?
No. Well, Neil we moved just a little bit, not much. I think he'll be fine, but he'll be up for election.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I mean, and especially since some of it wasn't necessary.
None of it was necessary. It's a federal court order. I mean, they should have never been in my business. We did it fine. The vote for the plan that I had was unanimous.
Yeah.
All my Democrats and all my Republicans voted for the redistricting plan. And the Supreme Court and the federal court came in and said, well, that's nice. You don't get to legislate yourself. We're going to tell you how to do it.
Well, listen, we're out of time for today, but it's been a pleasure to catch up with you. Thanks for taking time actually during the session to join us.
Yeah, we had 900 bills filed.
Woo!
So we made about 200 of them make it. So
yeah, that's a big deal. It's been a pleasure. This has been Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, and I can't tell you how much I enjoyed visiting with you today.
It's great to visit. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.